Nuremberg, Germany, December 24th, 1816. The smell reaches you before anything else does. Pine resin and hot tallow, the particular sweetness of oranges studded with cloves hanging from the branches of a tree that has been standing in the parlour since morning, slowly warming in the heat of a dozen candles. There is sugar somewhere, caramelizing. There is mulled wine. There is the smell of wool coats that have just come in from the cold, carrying on their fibres the ghost of the street outside, cobblestone and frost and wood smoke and the faint animal warmth of a city pressing itself together against the winter. The parlour doors are open. The Stahlbaum house is full of people arranged in the careful formal way of families who celebrate correctly, who know the correct gestures for the correct occasions, who have laid the correct table and chosen the correct guests and dressed their children in the correct clothes. The father stands near the fireplace with his wine glass, speaking to another man about something that matters to them both. The mother moves through the room with the practiced ease of a woman who has prepared for this evening for 3 weeks and intends for no one to know it. Fritz, 7 years old, barrel-chested and loud, has already knocked something over and been forgiven for it. He is in the corner now, examining a package with his fingers. In the way, children examine packages when they believe no one is watching, pressing along the edges for the shape of the thing inside, calculating. And Marie, she is 7 years old also, Fritz's sister, and she is standing near the window, where the frost has made patterns on the glass that look almost deliberate, almost like something trying to communicate through the only medium available to it. She is not examining packages. She is watching the man in the corner. He arrived before the other guests. He is always here before the others. And this is one of the things Marie has always known about him without being told. That Godfather Drosselmeyer exists in spaces before other people enter them, that he is somehow already present in rooms that have not yet been occupied, like the way a cold draft tells you a window is open before you have turned to see it. He stands near the fireplace with a glass he has not drunk from, tall and thin in his dark coat, and the patch over his left eye catches the candlelight and holds it in a way that the eye beneath it, had it still been there, would not have done. He is not young. He is not old. He is the particular age of someone who has been the same age for a very long time. The other adults greet him warmly. The warmth of people who are glad to see someone, and also slightly relieved that he seems to be in a good mood tonight. He accepts their greetings with a smile that reaches his visible eye and stops there, precise and sufficient. He makes things. This is the official version of what Drosselmeyer is, a craftsman, a clockmaker, an inventor of extraordinary mechanical objects. And the gifts he brings are always extraordinary. Already the other children have gathered around the things he has brought tonight. A miniature castle, no larger than a hat box, with tiny figures inside that move along fixed tracks, turning, bowing, turning again, their painted faces showing the painted expressions they will be showing long after every person in this room is dead. A clockwork bird with feathers of hammered copper that opens its beak when wound, opens it in the perfect shape of a song, but produces no sound, just the shape of song, the gesture of it, the performance of it without the thing itself. He's outdone himself this year, someone says, and the room murmurs in agreement. Marie watches the mechanical bird open its beak in silence and does not say what she is thinking. Then, from beneath his coat, Drosselmeyer produces something wrapped in dark cloth, tied with a single cord, the color of old blood. He does not cross the room. He simply looks across all that candlelight and warmth and laughter to where Marie is standing by the frost-covered window, and he holds it out toward her. holds it out across the distance between them, as if the distance is not a distance at all, but simply a formality. She crosses the room. She takes it from his hands. "For you," he says, and his voice is the quiet voice he uses when he is saying something he has been saving. "I made it myself, especially." She looks up at him, the patch, the single visible eye finding her face, with its particular quality of attention, not the fond, distracted attention of other adults, but the attention of someone watching something they have been watching for a long time. "Thank you, Godfather," she says, "because it is what you say." "Open it," he says. The cloth falls away. It looks up at her with painted eyes and a hinged jaw stretched wide in a permanent smile. And the smile is the right shape for a smile, and the eyes are the right shape for eyes, and everything about the object in her hands is correct in its proportions, and wrong in some way that has nothing to do with proportions. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. The wood is old, older than a new gift should be. A nutcracker, a soldier, a face that has been wearing a smile for so long, the smile has stopped meaning what smiles are supposed to mean. "It's wonderful," her mother says, appearing beside her with the reflexive enthusiasm of a woman managing a social occasion. "Godfather Drosselmeyer, you always make the most extraordinary things. What do you say, Marie?" "Thank you," Marie says again, still looking at the painted eyes. Drosselmeyer is watching her look at it with an expression she cannot read. "Take good care of it," he says. "It has been waiting a long time for the right person." Before she can ask what he means by that, before she can ask why a new toy would have been waiting, or waiting where or for how long, Fritz appears at her elbow with the decisive energy of a person who has spotted something he wants. "Let me see it," Fritz says, and takes it without waiting for her answer. "Fritz," her mother says, in the warning voice. But Fritz is already examining it with the rough curiosity he brings to all objects, testing the hinge of the jaw with his thumb, pressing it open and closed, and Marie watches and says nothing, because she can see what is about to happen and cannot stop it, can only watch as Fritz pushes the jaw too far and the small metal mechanism inside snaps with a sound like a knuckle cracking. Fritz drops it, steps over it, moves on to the next thing. Marie crouches and picks it up from the floor. The jaw hangs loose, the hinge broken. She looks at it for a moment, the damaged face, the smile interrupted. And then she unties the ribbon from her own hair and loops it around the jaw, the way you bandage something that is bleeding, holding the broken thing together as well as she can manage. She looks up to find Drosselmeyer watching her do this from across the room. He is not moved. He is watching with his single visible eye, and his expression is the most complex thing she has ever seen on any adult face. Something that is not quite satisfaction and not quite sorrow, but contains elements of both. The expression of someone watching something unfold that they designed to unfold in exactly this way. She carries the nutcracker upstairs herself. She sets it on the windowsill. She gets into bed. She does not sleep. The candle on the nightstand burns down slowly, and the frost on the window makes the moonlight diffuse and strange, and Marie lies in the dark and looks at the nutcracker on the sill and thinks about what Drosselmeyer said. It has been waiting a long time for the right person. She turns this over in her mind, the way you turn over a stone to see what lies beneath it, examining it from different angles, trying to find the side of it that makes ordinary sense. She cannot find that side. Somewhere in Berlin, a man named Hoffmann has just finished writing the story you're about to hear. He dedicated it to a real child. He dressed it in the language of Christmas and magic, and the warmth of well-lit parlours in winter, and he gave it to the world as a gift. Some gifts, once given, cannot be taken back. Downstairs, the last guests are leaving. She hears the front door, the cold air pushing briefly into the house before the door closes against it, the sound of her parents' voices settling from celebration into the quieter register of a household preparing to sleep. The candle on her nightstand gutters, bends sideways as if touched by something moving in still air, and goes out. The room goes dark, and in the darkness, the painted eyes on the windowsill catch the last thin thread of moonlight coming through the frosted glass, and they do not look like painted eyes anymore. They look like eyes that have been waiting, and in the particular quality of the silence that follows the candle going out, in the silence that is not empty but occupied, that has a texture and a temperature and the faint, unmistakable quality of attention. Marie pulls her blanket up to her chin and looks at the ceiling and understands, without being able to say how she understands it, that Christmas is over, and that whatever comes next has already begun. The clock in the downstairs hall strikes midnight. Marie has been lying in the dark for 4 hours, listening to the house settle around her. The creak of floorboards cooling in the cold, the distant sound of the last guests leaving, her parents' voices dropping from celebration into the quieter register of a household preparing to sleep. Fritz has been unconscious since 9 o'clock, the way children are unconscious, who spend themselves completely and feel no guilt about it. The whole house is breathing the slow breath of people who have eaten well and drunk warm things, and told each other the lies that make winter bearable. Marie is awake. She has been awake with the particular alertness of a child who cannot explain why she is afraid, but cannot stop being it. Not the clean fear of something identified and named, but the fear that lives in the body before the mind has caught up with it. The fear that manifests as cold fingers and a heartbeat 2 degrees too fast, and the inability to stop looking at the thing on the windowsill. The nutcracker stands where she placed it, the white handkerchief still tied around its jaw, the moonlight from the frosted glass falling across its face in a way that shifts as clouds move outside, so that the expression seems to change without changing, seems to move through moods it should not be capable of having. She thinks about Drosselmeyer. He has always been in her life the way certain things are, simply in a life. Not chosen, not explained, simply present, woven into the fabric of ordinary days with the matter-of-fact permanence of furniture or weather. He is her godfather, which is an official thing, a church-recorded thing, a thing that means he has a specific sanctioned proximity to her that the other adults in her life do not have. He comes to the house on occasions that are not always occasions. Not only Christmas, not only birthdays, but sometimes on a Tuesday afternoon, appearing at the door with his coat, smelling of cold air and machine oil, accepted into the parlour by her mother with that careful warmth, invited to sit, offered coffee that he accepts and does not drink. He repairs the clocks. This is the practical justification for his visits, and it is real. The Stahlbaum house has 7 clocks, and they require maintenance, and Drosselmeyer is extraordinarily good at maintaining them. But Marie has always noticed what happens to the house while he works. The ticking stops, not gradually, not clock by clock, but all at once, as if the house itself is holding its breath while his hands are inside its mechanisms. The rooms feel larger during these silences. Her mother's smile goes slightly fixed at the edges. Once she asked her mother about it. She was 5 years old, standing in the kitchen doorway while her mother rolled pastry, and she said, "Why does the house go quiet when Godfather Drosselmeyer is inside the clocks?" Her mother paused with the rolling pin and looked at her with the expression she used when Marie said things that required a decision about how to respond. "The house doesn't go quiet, darling," she said, and went back to the pastry. "You're very imaginative." Marie had stood in the doorway for another moment, listening to the silence that was definitely there, and then she went back to her room. She has also noticed the way Drosselmeyer looks at her, not the way the other adults look at her. The fond, slightly distracted attention of people who find children charming in the aggregate, and mildly inconvenient in the specific. He looks at her with attention that has a purpose behind it, the way you look at something you have been watching for a long time and expect to see change. She has felt, since she was old enough to feel anything about the way adults look at her, that Drosselmeyer is waiting for her to become something, that he knows what the something is, and she does not. He has a nephew. He mentioned this once 2 Christmases ago, at the dinner table, said only that the boy was talented, that he had suffered a misfortune, and his voice around the word misfortune did not make it light. Marie had asked, "What happened to him?" Drosselmeyer had looked at her across the table with his single, visible eye, and said, "He is being looked after. Things are in hand." And then he reached for his wine glass, and the conversation moved elsewhere, and the door closed before it had finished opening. She thinks about the nephew now, in the dark, looking at the Nutcracker on the windowsill. She does not know why she is thinking about him. She only knows that the two things feel connected in her chest, in the way that things feel connected before you have the language to explain the connection. The absent nephew, and the strange carved face with its broken jaw, and its permanent, practiced smile. The clock downstairs strikes 1, then 2, then the silence. Between 2 and 3, which is the longest silence in any house on any winter night. The silence at the bottom of the dark, before it begins its slow return toward morning. And then she hears something that is not the house settling. She does not move. She lies very still in the way that children who are frightened go still. Not from courage, but from the body's ancient understanding that stillness is sometimes the only available response to what is coming. The sound is not loud. It is almost not a sound at all. It is closer to a quality of the air, a change in the texture of the silence. The way silence changes when it is not empty but occupied. She gets out of bed. She is afraid, and she gets out of bed anyway, because the thing she is afraid of is downstairs in the room where she left the Nutcracker, and she tied her handkerchief around its jaw, and she cannot explain why that matters, only that it does. She takes the candle from the nightstand. She lights it at the last ember in the bedroom grate. She opens the door to the hall. The stairs are empty. The house is still and dark and smells of the cooling remnants of the evening, the wine and the pine and the candle wax of a celebration that is now definitively over. She descends with her bare feet, finding each step by memory, the candle held out before her, and arrives at the parlor door. The parlor door is open. She left it closed. She steps into the room, and what she sees is not what she expected, and is exactly what she feared. The parlor looks like the parlor. The tree still in the corner, the candles burned to nothing, the ornaments dull in the darkness without flame to wake them. The cabinet against the far wall, with its glass doors, stands where it always stands, but the cabinet is open. The toys inside are not where they were. The cold is worse here than in the rest of the house. Not the ordinary cold of a room where the fire has gone out, but something more directional. Something with a source. The candle flame bends sideways and stays bent. Then the sound begins in earnest. It starts beneath the floor. Not a scurrying. Something more organized than that. More deliberate. The sound of things moving in formation. She has heard her father describe military marches, has heard Fritz imitate the drums, and the sound beneath the floorboards has that quality, regular, purposeful. the sound of bodies that know where they are going. The walls begin to breathe. Not violently. The room simply begins to expand, the ceiling rising, the floor dropping, the familiar proportions of the Stahlbaum parlor elongating slowly into something larger than it has any right to be. The cabinet grows until its glass doors are the size of windows. The Christmas tree becomes a forest. Marie stands in the center of it and watches herself become small. The toy soldiers along the top shelf straighten, one by one, with the deliberate sequencing of an army waking before dawn. And then, the Nutcracker, standing at their center with his white handkerchief jaw, turns. His head. He turns it toward the baseboards. The mice come from the walls, from the places children are told exist for no purpose, that adults paper over and paint over and instruct children not to think about. They come in their hundreds, and then in their thousands, a river of movement across the floor, and the sound of them fills the enlarged parlor from wall to wall. The Mouse King comes last. He moves through his subjects with the unhurried confidence of something that has never needed to hurry. And when he comes into the full, terrible clarity of Marie's candle, what she sees above the mass of mice, what she sees where a single head should be, is something her mind refuses, initially, to accept. 7 heads. 7 distinct faces, each wearing its own expression, each crowned with a different crown suggesting a different origin, a different claim. The eyes on those 7 faces are not the eyes of an animal. They are the eyes of something that thinks. And all 14 of them find Marie standing with her single candle and her bare feet on the cold floor. And they are interested in her. Not in the way predators are interested in prey. Not that simple, not that clean. Interested in her specifically, by name. The Nutcracker steps forward. The stiffness that belongs to objects has gone out of him. He moves with the specific gait of someone who has a body, and is grateful for it, even if that body is not the one they were born with. Carefully, deliberately, the way people move when they are aware of what they have and afraid of losing it. He raises his small sword, and the army of toy soldiers behind him raises its weapons, and the battle begins before Marie can breathe. It is not the clean, choreographed battle of a toy theater. It is the chaos of things fighting for their lives in a confined space that has become, by some logic beyond the ordinary, enormous. The mice press forward in organized masses, and the toy soldiers hold and break and reform. The Nutcracker moves through all of it with a focus that has nothing casual in it, fighting not with the enthusiasm of something that enjoys fighting, but with the grim, specific determination of someone settling a very old debt. The line breaks. The mice push through. The Nutcracker goes down suddenly, mid-motion, as if something essential has been removed, and the Mouse King advances, with all 7 faces arranged in 7 different expressions of satisfaction. Marie does not think. She reaches down and pulls off her left shoe and throws it with everything she has into the mass of mice between herself and the Mouse King. The impact scatters them. The Mouse King turns all 7 faces toward her at once. For one moment she and the Mouse King look at each other across the chaos, and what passes between them in that moment is not yet a conversation, but it is the beginning of one, a recognition, a mutual acknowledgement that she exists in this story in a way she did not exist in it an hour ago. Then the mice retreat, organized, unhurried, the same deliberate quality they arrived with. Back to the walls, back to the baseboards. Gone. The room returns to its ordinary size. The cold retreats to the edges, where cold normally lives. Marie is standing in the center of the parlor in her nightgown with one shoe on and blood running in a thin line down her forearm. She does not know which moment of the battle produced the cut, which piece of broken cabinet glass she moved past without noticing. She looks at it with the expression of someone whose body has confirmed something their mind was already carrying. The Nutcracker is standing upright in the clearing left by the mice. He turns toward her. His painted eyes find her face, and the expression on that wooden face does something it has no mechanism to do. It changes. Not physically. Not in any way she could demonstrate to her mother in the morning, but she feels it, the same way she felt the cold before she entered. The room. "You're hurt," he says. His voice is thin and strange, the voice of something learning to use an instrument it was not built for, the way wind finds a gap in a wall and discovers it can produce a note. He is looking at her arm with the expression of someone who understands the cost of what she just did. "It's small," Marie says, because it is. "It isn't small," the Nutcracker says. And then, after a pause that contains a great deal, "Thank you." She looks at him, at the painted eyes and the mended jaw, and the expression that a wooden face cannot produce, but is producing. She has been carrying him around this house since Christmas night, talking to him in the one-sided way of children who have decided to love something, and this is the first time the love has had a direction to travel in both ways, the first time it has met something coming back. "Who are you?" she asks. He is quiet for a moment. Not the silence of someone who doesn't know the answer, but the silence of someone deciding how much of the answer to give. "Someone who has been waiting," he says finally, "to be seen." Before she can ask what he means, before she can ask any of the things that question opens into, she hears a sound in the doorway behind her. Drosselmeyer stands at the threshold in his dark coat. He has not entered the room. He has been standing in the doorway for how long she cannot know. For the entire battle, perhaps, or for longer than that. For time that runs by different rules than the time in the clocks he repairs. He looks at Marie on the floor with her bleeding arm. He looks at the Nutcracker standing upright in the center of the room, and his visible eye holds an expression that she cannot fully read from this distance, but that she will understand better, much better, in 3 days' time, when he comes back and sits in his chair by the window and begins to tell her a story. He crosses the room and crouches beside her. His hands, when he takes her injured arm to examine the cut, are precise and cold. "Godfather," Marie says, "did you know this would happen?" He wraps her arm in the handkerchief that was tied around the Nutcracker's jaw, the jaw that is mended now, seamlessly, as though the break on Christmas evening was something that happened in a different version of the night. He wraps it carefully, with the attention of someone performing a task that matters, and when he finishes, he looks at her with his single visible eye and says, "I knew something would happen. I did not know it would be you who made it happen the way it did." That isn't the same as an answer, Marie says. Something moves in his expression. Not quite a smile, something that acknowledges the accuracy of what she has said without being pleased by it. "No," he agrees. "It isn't." He carries her upstairs and lays her in her bed and tucks the blanket around her with hands that are precise and gentle and cold. He places her wrapped arm on top of the blanket, carefully, in the specific way of someone who has noted the wound and understands its significance. He does not wake her parents. He sits in the chair by her bed in the dark, and he does not appear to sleep, and Marie lies under her blanket and looks at the ceiling and says, "Is the Nutcracker going to be all right?" "He has been waiting a long time," Drosselmeyer says, from the shadow of the chair. "Tonight was the beginning of the end of the waiting. Whether it ends well depends on things that have not yet been decided." What things? But he does not answer this, and after a while Marie's eyes grow heavy, and the room becomes the soft dark of genuine sleep, rather than the watch dark of fear, and she goes under. In the morning, Drosselmeyer is gone. There is no sign he was ever there, except for the handkerchief on her arm, wrapped with a precision her own hands could not have managed, and the Nutcracker on the windowsill. Jaw mended, painted eyes catching the pale December sun, standing with the particular stillness of something that has been waiting for a long time and has just been given a reason to keep waiting. Marie looks at him from her pillow for a long time. Then she gets up and goes downstairs and sits at the breakfast table and angles her chair so she can see the windowsill from where she sits. And she tries to figure out how to say what she knows in words that her mother will believe. She already understands that she will not find them, but she tries anyway, because she is 7 years old, and she has not yet learned that some things, once they become yours, can only ever be yours. That the truest experiences travel alone, without luggage, without witnesses, without any proof that they happened, except the way they changed the face of the person they happened to. She opens her mouth. Her mother sets down the coffee pot and looks at her with patient, loving eyes. And Marie begins. 3 days pass before Drosselmeyer comes back. Marie knows he will come. She has known it the way she has always known things about him. Not through information, not through anything arranged or promised, but through the instinct that living near someone attentive develops in a child over time. The instinct of a small creature that has learned to read the air pressure, changes that precede certain kinds of weather. She tries to tell her mother what happened on Christmas night. She waits for a pause at the breakfast table, steps into it carefully, says that something happened in the parlor. Her mother sets down the coffee pot and looks at her with the patient, slightly saddened expression of a woman who loves her daughter and has already decided what she is about to say is kindness. She uses the word vivid twice. Her father does not look up from his newspaper. Fritz says he doesn't remember anything, which is exactly as useful as Fritz always is. Marie finishes her breakfast and says nothing else. She has learned the specific lesson this moment was designed to teach. Not that what she experienced wasn't real, but that the reality of an experience and the believability of it to other people are two entirely separate things, and that some things belong only to the person who had them. On the afternoon of December 27th, Godfather Drosselmeyer knocks at the front door. Marie hears it from the upstairs hallway. The specific 3-beat knock, unhurried and precise, that belongs only to him. She comes downstairs and finds him in the parlor. Coat still on, which means he intends for this to seem like a short visit. And in his single, visible eye is the full acknowledgement of everything her parents have decided did not happen. He says he would like to tell Marie a story. Her mother smiles, says of course, and leaves the room with the particular timing that makes Marie wonder, not for the first time, how much of her mother's careful obliviousness is genuine, and how much of it is a choice. Drosselmeyer settles into the chair by the window, his back to the light, his face in shadow. Marie sits on the ottoman near the cold grate with the nutcracker in her hands, because she has been carrying it since Christmas night in the way you carry something injured. He looks at the nutcracker for a moment. Something moves in his expression. Brief, controlled, gone. Then he begins. There was, he says, once a king. His voice changes when he tells stories. The brisk precision of his ordinary speech softens into something more deliberate, something that moves at the speed of old things, as if the narrative has found its natural channel through him, and he is simply allowing it to pass. There was a king, and this king had a daughter born on a night in November, and the kingdom celebrated for 7 days. The princess was luminously, almost painfully beautiful, the kind of beauty that makes people in its presence feel a complicated mixture of pleasure and unease, as if they are looking at something with no business being so perfect in an imperfect world. Her name was Pirlipat. Her father held her and wept openly in front of his entire court, and no one found this strange, because they all understood what it was to want something for so long that wanting becomes part of the architecture of who you are. The kingdom celebrated, and beneath the palace floor, beneath the marble and oak and stone that separated the world of the court from the world of things that live in darkness, something heard the bells. The Mouse Queen had 7 sons. She had survived for years in the warm spaces behind the palace walls, by being careful, by never drawing attention, by taking only what would not be noticed. This was the arrangement, and it had worked, until the palace kitchens began rendering fat for the royal feast. The smell reached her through the walls, rich animal, warm against the cold of a November night. She and her family took. What the kitchens would not immediately notice was missing, operating with the precise economy of long practice. But the royal sausage maker had spent 30 years perfecting his recipe and measured his ingredients with the obsessive accuracy of an artist who can feel any deviation in his work. He tasted his sausages on the morning of the feast. He went to the king. The extermination was swift and total. Traps sealed every gap. The Mouse Queen's entire family, aunts, cousins, brothers, the whole underground network of her life, were killed in a single afternoon with the thorough efficiency of people who have decided that a problem must not be managed but ended. All of them, except the Queen, except her 7 sons. She found them that night in the cold behind the walls and sat with them in the dark for a very long time, not weeping, past weeping, making the transition that certain kinds of loss precipitate. From the softness of sorrow into the hardness of intention, she went to the nursery. Drosselmeyer pauses. Outside, the December sky is doing what December skies do in Nuremberg, closing early, thickening from pale grey to the deeper grey that precedes dark. Marie watches his face in the growing shadow and waits. The princess was 3 days old, he says, asleep in her cradle, surrounded by 6 nursemaids who had fallen asleep because the feast had gone late and the wine had been good, and they were human beings who needed sleep, the way all human beings do. The Mouse Queen came through the gap at the base of the nursery wall that no one had thought to seal. She crossed the floor. She put a hand on the sleeping princess. In the morning, the nurse reached into the cradle and found that Princess Pirlipat was no longer beautiful. He says this simply, with no elaboration. The simplicity is the horror of it. He does not describe what the princess became. He describes instead the sound the nurse made, the way the other nursemaids rose from their chairs, the quality of the silence before the king arrived, and the different quality of silence after. The king, who had wept with pure joy 7 days ago, stood over the cradle and wept now, with something that had no opposite. Scholars arrived from other kingdoms. Physicians consulted their books. None of them could undo what the Mouse Queen had done. The king turned to the only man in the kingdom whose expertise lay in the space between the mechanical and the inexplicable. He turned, says Drosselmeyer, and his voice drops into a register Marie has not heard from him before. To me. The room is very quiet. Marie rearranges everything she knows about her godfather in the light of this single sentence. Not a story he was told. Not a history he has studied. Something he was inside of, something he was asked to fix, something he is still carrying. He spent years searching, he says, traveling across half a continent, following chains of reference from one archive to the next. The cure, when he finally found it in a monastery manuscript so old the vellum was nearly translucent, was specific in the way that only true things are specific. The kernel of the Krakatau nut, a nut with a shell the colour of old bronze that had defeated every instrument applied to it, cracked by the teeth of a young man who had never shaved, never worn boots, who must then present the kernel with his eyes closed and walk 7 steps backward without stumbling. He and the royal astronomer travelled for years searching for this young man. Each candidate becomes, in Drosselmeyer's telling, a portrait in a few sentences. A miller's son who cracked the nut and stumbled on the 4th step. A young nobleman who could not crack it at all and wept in front of the court. A boy near the border who made it to the 6th step and was tripped by something invisible. The Mouse Queen had sons, 7 of them. They had been watching. Years passed in the texture of days that are individually bearable and collectively exhausting. And then Drosselmeyer came home. He had not been home in 3 years. He arrived in the autumn intending to stay only long enough to consult certain books, and he found his nephew. He says this simply, the way you say the sentence that changes everything, and then he stops. His nephew was living in his uncle's house, managing the workshop and the clocks with the capable quietness of a young person who has learned not to require much from the world. He was in his early 20s. He had never shaved. He had never worn boots. Marie feels the place in the story where she is now standing. She feels it as a physical thing, a change in the ground beneath her. She grips the Nutcracker tighter and waits. Drosselmeyer's expression is the most complex thing she has ever seen on any face. Not simple guilt, not simple love. The expression of someone who has been carrying a calculation that cost someone else the price, who has made a certain peace with it that is not the same as comfort, but is what remains when you have looked at what you have done and decided the alternative would have been worse. He brought his nephew to court. He stood beside him in the throne room as the boy raised the Krakatuk nut to his lips. It cracked. The kernel was presented. The princess's golden hair returned. Her eyes cleared. Her beauty came back like colour returning to something that had been drained. The court exhaled. The king wept for the 2nd time. The nephew walked his 7 steps backward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the 5th step, the Mouse Queen threw herself beneath his heel. She had been in the room the entire time, in the gap no one had thought to check, because everyone was watching the centre of the room. The impact was almost nothing. A foot coming down on something very small, but the condition was 7 steps without stumbling, and he stumbled. The smallest possible deviation, a fractional loss of balance by the distance of almost nothing, and in that almost nothing the condition broke, and the curse had its opening. Drosselmeyer stopped speaking. Marie looks down at the nutcracker in her hands, the painted eyes, the wooden face, the mended jaw beneath her handkerchief. She has known since the 2nd sentence of the story. She has known it the way she knew the Mouse King was intelligent, before she could see his faces clearly. The Nutcracker was a person. The Nutcracker is a person. She has been carrying him through the house since Christmas night, and she bled on the parlour floor to save him, and she did not know, could not have known, what she was holding. Drosselmeyer watches her understand. He does not help her with it, and does not impede it, simply witnesses it with his single visible eye. When she looks up at him, what she finds in his expression is not the satisfaction she feared. It is something older, the expression of a man who created a situation and must now live in it, alongside the people he created it around. The curse can still be broken, he says. It requires someone who has never been spoiled by vanity, someone who can see what he is, not what he was, and choose him anyway. Marie looks at the Nutcracker for a long time, then she looks at her godfather, and what her face holds is not the soft, willing expression of a child delighted to receive a magical instruction. It is something more careful than that. She is 7 years old, and she is seeing dimly but clearly enough the shape of the thing she has been placed inside. She is beginning to understand who built it, and why, and what following it to its end is going to cost her. She says nothing. Outside, a clock ticks with its ordinary mechanical patience, and Drosselmeyer's hands, folded in his lap, are very still. The Mouse King comes to her alone. Not that night, and not the night after. He waits with the patience of something that has never needed to hurry. that understands leverage the way water understands the shapes of stone, not through force but through consistency, through the willingness to keep returning to the same place until the place gives way. He waits until Marie has almost convinced herself that the battle was the end of it, that the mice retreating was a conclusion, rather than a pause. He waits until she has begun, cautiously, to sleep through the night again. Then he comes. She wakes to the cold first, the directional cold, the cold with a source, the same cold that preceded the battle on Christmas night. And she is sitting upright in her bed before she is fully conscious, her body understanding what her mind is still assembling. The room is dark. The frost on the window makes the moonlight diffuse and pale, spreading it thin across the floor, across the foot of the bed, across the figure standing at the foot of the bed. 7 heads, 7 crowns catching what little light the moon provides, glinting with the particular cold gleam of metal in winter darkness. His eyes, all 14 of them, are already on her face, and they have been on her face, she understands, for some time before she woke. He does not speak immediately. He allows the fact of himself to settle into the room first, the way someone who is very confident of their position allows silence to do the preliminary work of a conversation. When he does speak, his voice is the thing she was not prepared for. She had expected something monstrous, the shriek of an animal or the grinding of something mechanical. What she gets instead is a voice that is smooth and thoughtful and almost gentle, the voice of someone who has considered what he is about to say and selected his words with care. He tells her he knows what she did in the parlor on Christmas night. He says this without accusation, almost with admiration, the way a chess player acknowledges a good move made by the opposing side. He says that her Nutcracker, her carved and painted soldier, standing on the windowsill above her sleeping head every night, will suffer for what she did. The manner of this suffering he describes in enough detail to make it specific and real, and not in enough detail to make it bearable to think about. And the calibration of this, enough, but not too much, tells Marie something important about the Mouse King that she files away alongside everything else she is learning to observe about the powerful figures in her life. He is intelligent. He is controlled. He is not angry. This is the most frightening thing about him. His demands are small. This is the second thing she was not prepared for. She had expected something enormous, something impossible, something that would announce itself as a villain's demand and give her the clear, clean opportunity to refuse. Instead, he asks for sweets. The marzipan from her Christmas plate, left on the nightstand. The sugar figures her mother brought from the market last week. The little animals in their white paper bag. Small things. Things a child could give without anyone noticing they were gone. He will return tomorrow night, he says. There will be something else then. Small things, he implies each time. Things it would seem unreasonable to refuse. Then he is gone, withdrawing into the shadows at the edge of the room with the organized, unhurried movement she remembers from the retreat of his army. The movement of something that is not fleeing because it has no need to flee, that is simply choosing to be elsewhere for now. Marie lies in the dark for a long time after he leaves. In the morning, she gives the marzipan without telling anyone why. She tells herself it is a small thing, which it is, and that small things are worth giving if they prevent larger ones, which is a logic she has arrived at herself and which she does not yet recognize as the logic that the Mouse King designed specifically to fit her. He comes back the next night, and the night after that. Each visit follows the same structure. The cold, the dark, the 14 eyes finding her face before she has fully woken, the smooth and reasonable voice, the specific demand. He asks for her picture books next, then the sugar plums she had been saving, then the small porcelain figures from the shelf above her desk, the ones her mother brought back from a trip to Dresden 2 years ago, painted with the meticulous delicacy of miniature things that know they are precious and hold themselves accordingly. Mary gives each thing, she gives them, with the specific expression of someone who has made a calculation and arrived at an answer they are not entirely comfortable with but cannot argue against. The expression of a person learning to absorb a cost by reframing it as a choice. She tells herself she is protecting the Nutcracker. She tells herself it is worth it. Both of these things are true, and neither of them is the whole truth. And she is 7 years old and not yet equipped to identify what the whole truth is. What she is equipped to identify is the change in herself that happens between the first night and the fifth. The way the room feels different when she goes to bed now. Smaller, more attended to, occupied by something invisible that has made itself comfortable in the space between her waking and her sleeping. The way she has begun to move through her days with a portion of herself withheld, a portion always turned inward and backward, counting what she has left, calculating what the next night might require. Fritz notices nothing. Her parents notice nothing. This is not a judgment. It is simply the fact of what children carry alone when they have learned that carrying it alone is the only available option. On the 6th night, the Mouse King asks for her new dress, the pale blue one he specifies, with the white trim at the collar, the one she wore to Christmas morning service and had been told was for special occasions only, meaning it hung in the wardrobe, and she looked at it and felt the particular pleasure of something being saved for a worthy moment. Marie says no. It is the first time she has said no, and the word comes out of her in the small, clear voice of someone who has found the thing they are not willing to surrender. She says it without theatre, without raised voice, simply as a fact. No, she will not give him the dress. The Mouse King's 14 eyes do not change. His voice does not change. He says that the Nutcracker's suffering will be measurable and specific, and that she will be able to hear it from her bedroom if she listens on the right night. He describes what she will hear with the same careful calibration as before. Enough, but not too much. And then he waits. The silence between them is the longest silence of Marie's young life. She gives him the dress. She takes it from the wardrobe in the dark after he leaves and folds it and leaves it at the foot of her bed. And in the morning, it is gone. And she goes to breakfast and eats her porridge and tells no one. And the portion of herself that is withheld has grown slightly larger overnight without her deciding to let it grow. It is that afternoon, sitting alone in her room with the Nutcracker in her lap, that he speaks. She has been talking to him for days, not expecting a response, simply talking in the way that children talk to things they have decided to love, filling the silence around them with the running current of their interior life. She has told him about the Mouse King's visits. She has described each demand and each surrender with the honest, unembellished narration of someone who has no one else to tell. She has not asked him for anything. She has not asked him to fix it, or to help, or to be anything other than what he is. A wooden face that she holds in her hands because holding it is what she has to offer. So when he speaks, she is not expecting it, and the sound of his voice, thin and strange, the sound of something learning to use an instrument it was not built for, like wind finding a particular gap in a wall and discovering it can produce a note, stops her completely. He says her name. He says it the way people say the names of others who have done something for them that they cannot adequately acknowledge, with a weight in it, a specific gravity that the word itself does not usually carry. Then he says that he knows what she has been giving up, that he has known about every night, every object, every small surrender. that he is sorry. Marie looks at him. She looks at the painted eyes that she has been carrying around her house for 6 days, and she looks at the expression that a wooden face has no mechanism to produce, and she feels, in the place behind her sternum, where the most important things register, that she is looking at a person, not a toy, and not a soldier, and not the object of a curse in her godfather's complicated story. A person who is apologizing to her. A person who is embarrassed by what they need and grateful for what they have been given, and aware, painfully aware, that the two things do not balance. He tells her his name. The narrator holds this. The pause before the name, the significance of it, because in this story, as in all stories that know what they are doing, naming something is the beginning of claiming it. And the Nutcracker giving Marie his name is the first genuine act of intimacy in a story that has been built entirely on transactions and debts. He tells her that the Mouse King will not stop, that the demands will keep arriving, growing, calibrated always to find the precise thing she has left to give. He tells her this not to frighten her, but because she deserves to know the shape of the thing she is inside, which is more than anyone else in her life has offered her. Marie is quiet for a long time after he finishes speaking. Then she tells him she is going to end it. She says it the way she said no to the dress, in the small, clear voice of someone who has found their line, not with the theatrical confidence of a storybook heroine announcing her intentions to an admiring audience, but with the particular quiet determination of a child who has been absorbing a cost for 6 days and has finished calculating what she is and is not willing to pay. She does not know how yet. She knows only that she is done being the source of what the Mouse King requires, done being the mechanism through which someone else's power is maintained, done giving her small and specific things one by one into the dark, while the world around her notices nothing and her dress hangs empty in a wardrobe that is not her own. The Nutcracker looks at her with his painted eyes and says nothing, because there is nothing to say to that. Only the particular quality of stillness that belongs to someone who has been waiting in one form or another for a very long time and has just heard something that makes the waiting feel like it might have been worth it. Outside, the January dark presses against the window and the frost makes its careful patterns on the glass. And in the Stolbaum house, the clocks tick with the ordinary patience of mechanisms that do not know what they are measuring. Marie kills the Mouse King with a shoe. This is not how she imagined ending it, in the days between deciding she would and finding the way. She imagined something more considered, more deliberate, a plan with steps and contingencies arrived at through careful thought in the cold bedroom with the Nutcracker in her lap. What she gets instead is the sudden instinctive thing. The Mouse King appearing at the foot of her bed on the 7th night, demanding now the Nutcracker himself, demanding the thing she will not give, and Marie reaching for the nearest object her hand can find, and throwing it at his 7 crowned heads with everything she has. The shoe connects. The Mouse King staggers. Something falls from one of his 7 heads. A crown, small and cold, spinning across the floorboards. And then he is gone, retreating with a speed that is different from his previous retreats. Not the organized, unhurried withdrawal of something choosing to leave, but the flight of something hurt. Marie sits in her bed in the dark with her heart loud in her ears and her hands still in the position of throwing, and watches the shadows at the edge of the room until she is certain they are only shadows. Then the Nutcracker laughs. It is a short sound, unpracticed, the laugh of someone rediscovering that they are capable of it. Marie looks at him on the windowsill, and he is looking at her with the expression she has come to understand as gratitude, though the painted face has only its one expression, and she has learned to read everything else in the quality of his stillness. He holds out one hand, a wooden hand, small and stiff, and in his palms sit 7 small crowns, 1 for each head. The Mouse King is dead. Marie takes the crowns and holds them, and they are cold against her skin, cold with the specific coldness of things that have spent a long time in dark places. She should feel triumphant. She examines her chest for triumph, and finds instead something quieter, the feeling of a task completed, the particular relief of a weight set down, mixed with the faint, unexamined unease of someone who is not yet certain what comes after the weight is gone. The Nutcracker tells her there is somewhere he would like to take her. He says it carefully, and the carefulness is something she notices. The way you notice when someone who has been asking you for things for a long time shifts into offering something instead. He says it is a kingdom. He says the word with a specific quality of ownership that she has not heard from him before. Not the word as a fairy tale abstraction, but the word as a place, a real place. Somewhere he knows the geography of the way. You know the geography of home. She says yes. She will think about this later. The quickness of the yes, the absence of deliberation. She will wonder whether the yes was truly hers, or whether the story had simply built the question in a way that made yes the only grammatically available answer. But that is later. Now she takes his hand, his small wooden hand, and the room begins to change. The wardrobe against the wall opens, not with the ordinary complaint of hinges that need oil, but with the smooth, considered movement of something that has been waiting for a specific moment to reveal that it was always a door rather than furniture. Inside, beyond the hanging dresses, there is no back wall. There is instead a light, pale, diffuse. Neither warm nor cold, the light of a place that generates its own illumination without apparent source. They walk through it. The forest comes first. The narrator must slow here, must render this transition with the full weight it deserves. The shift from the known textures of the Stahlbaum house to the textures of somewhere else entirely. The trees are crystallized, which is not the same as frozen. Frost is water stopped in the process of falling. These trees have been made of crystal from the root up, grew into their crystalline form the way ordinary trees grow into bark and leaf, and the light that has no obvious source passes through them and fractures into colors that have no names. In ordinary German, colors that exist only in the spectrum of things that are too sweet to be real. The ground is soft underfoot in a way that takes Marie several steps to identify. She looks down. The path is marzipan, pale golden, with the slight give of something that yields to pressure without breaking. She lifts her foot, and the impression of it fills slowly back in, the path smoothing itself behind them with the quiet diligence of something that prefers to leave no evidence of passage. The river they cross is orange blossom water. She knows this because the smell of it reaches her before she sees it, floral and sweet and slightly medicinal, in the way of things that are made from flowers rather than merely scented like them. The bridge across it is barley sugar, translucent amber in the sourceless light, and the sound of the water. Beneath them is the sound of something that moves, because movement is its nature, and not because it has anywhere specific to go. Through all of it, the Nutcracker walks beside her, with the gait she has come to know, careful, deliberate, the walk of someone aware of what they have and afraid of losing it again. He doesn't speak as they move through the forest, and Marie does not ask him to. She has learned in the weeks of carrying him through her house that his silences are not empty, that they contain something, attention or gratitude, or the particular quality of presence that belongs to someone who has been absent for a long time and has not yet finished being grateful to simply be somewhere. The kingdom announces itself through smell before it becomes visible. The smell is extraordinary, and then immediately too much, sweetness layered upon sweetness. vanilla beneath caramelized sugar, beneath something floral and something citrus, and beneath all of it, a warmth that is not the warmth of a fire or a body, but the warmth of a place that has been sweet for so long that the sweetness has become a climate. Marie's first breath of it is wonderful. By the third breath, she understands that wonderful and overwhelming are not as far apart as she previously believed. Then the palace appears through the last of the crystal trees, and she stops walking. It is built from cake. This sounds, in the language of ordinary life, diminishing. Cake is a building material suggesting something temporary, something eaten at parties and forgotten. But the narrator must resist the diminishment, because the palace is not diminished. It is enormous and precise and constructed with the same extraordinary craft that Drosselmeyer brings to his mechanical objects. Every tier and turret calculated, every surface decorated, with a deliberateness that suggests the maker understood exactly what they were making and why. The windows are spun sugar, stretched thin enough to be translucent, and the light coming through them is the gold of late afternoon in summer, which is the light that exists in this kingdom, regardless of what season it is anywhere else. The courtiers who come to meet them are made of sugar and spun glass, and they move with the particular careful grace of things that know they are fragile. They greet the Nutcracker with a joy that is enormous and slightly too intense, the joy of subjects who have been waiting for a very long time and are not entirely sure the waiting is really over. They look at Marie with a warmth that is genuine, and also assessing, trying to understand, without being impolite about the trying, what she is and why she is here, and what her presence means for the kingdom's immediate future. The Sugarplum Fairy receives them in the throne room. She is not what Marie expected, which means she is not what the story seems to be offering. She is not decorative. She moves through the throne room with the efficient authority of someone who has been running something in someone else's absence and has developed, through the running of it, opinions about how it should be run. She welcomes the Nutcracker with warmth that is real and relief that is realer, and she welcomes Marie with warmth that is also real and contains, very precisely controlled, a single clear question that she does not ask aloud. Her eyes say, "How long are you staying?" The feast that follows is everything the kingdom's name promises. The narrator renders it slowly, deliberately, the way the Twilight script renders its most important moments of peace. Because this is the peak, the place the story has been building toward, and it needs to be felt fully before what comes after it can be felt at all. The tastes are extraordinary. The music is extraordinary. The warmth and the light and the specific pleasure of sitting in a place that has been designed entirely around the principle of sweetness are extraordinary. And the Nutcracker, across the table, is being transformed, not in the dramatic, visible way of the parlor, not the sudden reversal of the curse, but in the smaller way that people transform when they are back in the place where they are known. The gradual return of ease, of the body settling into its own familiar space, of the face remembering what it looks like when it is not performing anything. He speaks more freely here. He laughs twice, the second time more naturally than the first. He moves through his kingdom with a freedom that was never possible in the Stahlbaum parlor, never possible in the cabinet, never possible in the 17 years of waiting that Marie knows only the outline of. She watches him and feels something she did not expect to feel. Pride, simple, genuine, the pride of someone who helped make something possible, watching that something be fully realized. She bled for this. She surrendered her marzipan and her picture books and her Dresden porcelain figures and her pale blue dress with the white trim, and the Mouse King is dead, and here is his kingdom celebrating, and here is the person she gave those things for, return to himself, and it is good. It is good, and she is glad, and the feast is beautiful around her, and the music is extraordinary. She does not notice for a long time that no one has asked her what she wants. It arrives not as a sharp thought, but as a quiet one, the kind that surfaces between one course and the next, when the conversation has paused, and there is a moment of stillness in which the mind finds the thing it has been circling. She looks around the throne room. The cake walls, the sugar courtiers, the spun glass windows with their permanent summer afternoon light, and she has the sudden clear sensation of a child who has been somewhere very beautiful for a long time and is just beginning to understand that she cannot remember how she got there. Not how she walked through the wardrobe and through the crystal forest and across the marzipan path. She remembers all of that. She means something different. She means the longer journey. Christmas Eve and the gift in the dark cloth and the battle and the blood on her arm and the 6 nights of giving and the 7th night of no and the Mouse King's falling crown and the yes. She said to come here. She tries to find the moment she chose any of it. The sugar plum fairy is watching her from across the table, not unkindly, with the expression of someone who has seen this moment arrive before. The moment when the guest from the outside world sits in the sweetness and begins to feel the particular weight of a place that was not built with them in mind. The music plays on. The candles burn without melting. Outside the spun sugar windows, the light is permanently the gold of late afternoon in a summer that does not belong to any calendar Marie has ever lived by. And she thinks, quietly, without saying it to anyone, I would like to go home. She does not say it. She holds it in her chest, alongside the pride and the gladness and the genuine beauty of everything around her. And she watches the Nutcracker laugh for the 3rd time, more naturally than the 2nd. And she understands that going home and being glad she came are not opposites, that both things can be true simultaneously, and that the ache of wanting to leave a beautiful place is different from the ache of having never arrived. But the wanting is there, small and patient and real. And the kingdom, in its permanent sweetness, in its sourceless light and its careful fragility, does not notice. Morning comes the way mornings come after extraordinary things, ordinarily. The light through Marie's bedroom window is the thin grey light of a January day in Nuremberg, which is the opposite of the kingdom of sweets in every particular. The sheets are rough linen. The room smells of cold air and the faint residue of the previous night's candle. Somewhere below, Fritz is already making the sounds that Fritz makes. The blunt percussive sounds of a person moving through a house with no awareness that the house might prefer quiet. Marie lies still and tries to hold on to it. The crystal forest, the marzipan path filling in behind her footsteps, the throne room with its spun sugar windows and its permanent summer light, the Nutcracker's face when he laughed for the 3rd time. She tries to hold these things the way you try to hold water in cupped hands, carefully, with full attention, and they go anyway, not all at once, but gradually, the edges softening first, and then the centers, the specific colors fading into the general impression of color, the particular sounds blurring into the general impression of sound. By the time her mother calls her for breakfast, Marie has the feeling of something extraordinary without most of its contents. She tells her mother at the table. She tells her carefully in the steady, unembellished voice she used after Christmas night. The voice she has learned works better than excitement. She describes the Mouse King's 7 heads and the 7 crowns and the blow that ended him. She describes the wardrobe opening onto the crystal forest, the marzipan path, the river of orange blossom water, the palace of cake and the sugar plum fairy's eyes asking how long she was staying. Her mother listens with the expression Marie now knows by heart. Patient, loving, slightly pained, the expression of a woman who has decided that kindness and correction are the same thing. She says that Marie has always had a wonderful imagination. She says that the stories Godfather Drosselmeyer tells can give children very vivid dreams. She uses the word vivid. Her father does not look up from his newspaper. Marie eats her porridge. She looks at the nutcracker on the windowsill across the room, where she can see it from the breakfast table if she angles her chair slightly, which she has been doing every morning since Christmas. It stands where it always stands, painted eyes catching the thin January light, jaw mended, expression unchanged. She stops telling people, not that day, not all at once. She tries once more, with Fritz, thinking that Fritz at least was present on Christmas night, that Fritz at least cannot tell her she dreamed something he was also awake for. Fritz listens for approximately 4 seconds, and then asks if he can have her porridge, if she isn't going to finish it. Marie looks at her brother, his open, uncomplicated face, his complete imperviousness to the texture of the world beneath its surface, and she feels something she will not have the word for until she is much older, the specific loneliness of having been somewhere that no one around you can find on any map. She gives him the porridge. Drosselmeyer visits that afternoon. He sits in his chair by the window, coat on, back to the light. Marie sits on the ottoman with the nutcracker in her lap and tells him everything with the same steady voice. And he listens, with the full, purposeful attention he always gives her. The attention that has a direction to it, that is collecting something. When she finishes, he is quiet for a moment, looking not at her but at the nutcracker, and his expression does the thing it does when she says something that lands in a place he already knew it would land. He tells her that what she experienced was real. He says it simply, without qualification, and the relief of it moves through Marie's chest so fast and so completely that she understands, only when it arrives, how much she has been needing it, not the confirmation of the magic. She knows the magic was real. She has always known. She does not need him to tell her. She needs him to say it because he is an adult, and adults make things real by believing them. And she has been carrying this alone for days, and it is heavy. He tells her there is more. His nephew, he says, will come. He says this in the way he says things that contain more than they appear to contain, simply with his hands folded in his lap, with his visible eye finding her face and staying there. The curse breaking was not a private event, he explains. The prince restored to himself means the prince returning to the world, to the obligations and the ceremonies and the protocols of the life that was interrupted 17 years ago when a young man walked 7 steps backward in a throne room and stumbled on the 5th. There are things that must be done, acknowledgements that must be made. He will come to the Stolbaum house, Drosselmeyer says, and he will come for Marie. Marie looks at her godfather for a long time. She thinks about the kingdom of sweets, about the wanting to go home that she held in her chest through the feast, the small quiet wanting that she never said aloud. She thinks about the sugar plum fairy's eyes asking how long she was staying, and about how no one in that throne room asked her what she wanted, and about how she had noticed this and held it alongside the beauty and told herself that both things could be true simultaneously, and that the ache of wanting to leave was different from the ache of having never arrived. She thinks about her pale blue dress, with the white trim that is gone now, given into the dark on the 5th night, and about her picture books, and her porcelain Dresden figures, and her marzipan, and her sugar plums. She thinks about what was taken, and what was given, and whether the arithmetic of it produces a number she recognizes. Then she looks at the nutcracker in her lap. She thinks about his face when he laughed for the 3rd time, the freedom that was in it, the ease of a person back in the place where they are known. She thinks about 17 years of waiting in the dark, in the cabinet, on the windowsill, carrying inside a wooden face, the memory of what it felt like to be a person, and she thinks about the Christmas Eve when her godfather crossed a room and held out something wrapped in dark cloth, and she crossed toward him and took it because the motion was a completion of something already in progress. She says yes. She does not say it to Drosselmeyer exactly. She says it the way you say the things that matter most, into the general air of the room, in the direction of the thing you are saying yes to, which is not a person, but a situation, a shape, an arrangement of the world that has been building since before you were old enough to see it building. Drosselmeyer nods once, and she understands that the nod means he was waiting for this, that this was always the next step, that the story has always known where it was going, even when she did not. She understands this, and she holds it alongside the yes, two things simultaneously true, and she does not let either of them cancel the other. He comes a week later. He comes to the front door of the Stahlbaum house on a morning in early January, when the frost is thick on the cobblestones, and the sky is the specific white of a sky that is considering snow. He is well dressed and young, in the way of someone whose youth has been preserved by circumstances rather than by time, and he stands in the doorway with the particular dignity of a person who has rehearsed this moment in some form for 17 years, and is now discovering that the real version is both exactly what he expected and nothing like it. Drosselmeyer introduces him to Marie's parents. The introduction is smooth and unremarkable, and contains nothing that would give a reasonable adult cause to question it. A young man, a nephew, visiting from out of town. Her parents receive him with the correct warmth, offer coffee, make the correct conversation. Marie stands at the edge of the room and looks at him. He looks at her, and in the look is everything the parlour contained. The battle and the blood on her arm, and the 6 nights of giving, and the kingdom and the feast and the pride she felt watching him laugh for the 3rd time. He looks at her with the eyes that she knows from the painted face. Not the painted eyes themselves, but what was behind them, what she always felt behind them on the morning she angled her chair to see him from the breakfast table. He crosses the room. He asks her quietly if she would like to be the queen of his kingdom. The room is ordinary around them. The coffee is being poured. Fritz is making his percussive sound somewhere nearby. Her mother is speaking to Drosselmeyer in the careful, warm voice. January light falls flat and pale through the windows, onto the furniture and the floorboards and the Christmas tree that is still in the corner, browned fully now, dropping its needles in small, silent falls that no one has had time to sweep. Marie looks at him for a long moment. Then she looks at the room, the breakfast table where she eats her porridge every morning in the company of people who love her and cannot find her on the map of where she has been. The windowsill, where the Nutcracker stood for 2 weeks, watching her sleep and being carried through the house, and never being seen by anyone who mattered as what he was. The chair by the fireplace where her mother sits in the evenings, and the chair beside it that belongs to her father, and the small ottoman where she sat and listened to her godfather's voice drop into the register of old things and learn the shape of what she had been placed inside. She says yes. She says yes, and means it, and also understands, in the moment of saying it, the full weight of what she is saying it to. Not a kingdom of sweets, not a fairy tale, conclusion, where the meaning is simple and the cost has been absorbed by the story's momentum and left behind at the final chapter. She is saying yes to going somewhere that she has already wanted to come home from. She is saying yes to a life built in the permanent sweetness of a place designed to be consumed, with the sugar plum fairies assessing eyes and the sugar courtier's careful grace, and the light that is always the gold of late afternoon in a summer that belongs to no calendar she has ever lived by. She says yes because she loves him, which is true. She says yes because she has given too much to stop now, which is also true. She says yes because the story was built around her by someone who understood her well enough to build it in exactly her shape. which is the truest thing, and the most complicated, and the one she holds most quietly. They leave that afternoon. The Stolbaum house is quieter after Marie. Not dramatically quieter. Fritz is still loud. The clocks still tick. Her mother still pours coffee, with the competent, pleasant efficiency of a woman who has decided that today will be an ordinary day, and most days she is correct. And the ordinary days accumulate into weeks and then months, and then the particular texture of a life in which something is missing. But the shape of the missing thing softens gradually until you can move around it without noticing. Her windowsill is empty. Her chair at the breakfast table holds its angle, slightly skewed toward the Nutcracker spot. For 3 days, before someone straightens it without remarking on why it needed straightening. Her pale blue dress with the white trim is gone, and no one knows where it went, and after a while, no one asks. Drosselmeyer comes to wind the clocks. He moves through the rooms with his precise and careful hands, opening the cases, adjusting the mechanisms, restoring, the tick that the house loses incrementally between his visits. He passes the empty windowsill and his face does what it does. Nothing, and everything that nothing contains. He accepts coffee. He does not drink it. He leaves before dark. Somewhere in Berlin, a man named Hoffmann will write all of this down. He will give it to the world dressed in the language of Christmas and magic and the warmth of holiday evenings, dedicated by name to a real child he knew. He will call it a fairy tale. The world will believe him mostly, because the world is inclined to believe the packaging of things, rather than examine their contents. But the contents are here, in the empty windowsill, and the straightened chair, and the dress that is gone, and the girl who said yes, in an ordinary room on an ordinary January morning, while the coffee was being poured, and the frost sat thick on the cobblestones outside. She gave everything the story asked for. She bled, and she surrendered, and she chose, and she followed. She loved something ugly until it became beautiful, which is what the story required. And then she went with it into the beautiful and permanent sweetness of the place it came from, and she did not come back. Every December, in theatres lit with extraordinary light, children in their best clothes watch a little girl receive a gift from a strange man who loves her in the specific way of people who need something from you. They watch her fight for it and bleed for it and follow it into a world made of sweetness. They watch the curtain come down on beauty and music and the promise of a kingdom, and they applaud, and the lights come up, and they go home. Some of them lie awake afterward, not from excitement, from something quieter than excitement, something that sits in the chest without a name, the feeling of a story that gave them everything it promised and kept something back, something they cannot identify but can feel the absence of, the way you feel a cold draft from a door that is closed but not quite latched. Marie gave everything. The story kept it, and the thing the story kept was not the marzipan or the picture books or the pale blue dress. It was her.